Hi, friends, and welcome to Mystic Bloom, the podcast where modern mysticism meets feminine embodiment. I'm your host, Jenny Scholl, founder of Mystic Bloom, and fiercely devoted to helping women reclaim their sacred power, align with divine wisdom, and embody the fullness of who they are. Together, we'll explore spirituality, sacred alignment, and the art of living in flow with your feminine truth. This is a sanctuary for transformation and a safe space for spiritual exploration. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Mystic Bloom. I have a very special podcast episode for you today and a special invitation. Part of why I started Mystic Bloom was that I couldn't quite find anywhere that explored spirituality in a very embodied somatic way, which includes exploring sensuality and sexuality. I believe that we are fully human and fully divine, and we don't often place an emphasis on the fully human when we're in the spiritual world. So today we're going to dive into a little bit more of exploring the sensuality and the sexuality and how we can use this exploration to learn more about ourselves, to connect deeper with ourselves and to the divine. So my invitation, if you are listening to this and it feels edgy, if you are listening to this and you notice your body is clenching, or you're like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable, my invitation is to stay. My invitation is to keep listening, to keep exploring, because we address that and we talk about that. And so if there's a little bit that feels uncomfortable, just stick with it, stay with it, because we will touch on what that might be teaching you in this exploration of yourself, right? Spiritual exploration is not just the exploration of the divine, it's of the divine within. And who we are and how we get to show up in this world and in this planet as fully embodied beings. So I cannot wait for you to listen to this. So now I'm going to introduce our guest. Cece is a somatic sexologist with a focus on alchemical intimacy, whose practice explores the intersections of pleasure, healing, and spirituality. With a background in Kundalini yoga, conscious kink and BDSM, energy work, and somatica sexology, she helps people reclaim their sensual power through deep body awareness, taboo wisdom, and unconventional healing modalities. As the host of Her Drive podcast, Cynthia amplifies raw, unfiltered conversations about desire, intimacy, and self-discovery. Her workshops focus on somatic Shibari, tantric practices, and emotional release techniques, which invites participants to unlock pleasure as profoundly as they've felt pain. Her mission is to activate others in dissolving shame, embracing desire, and stepping into the full radiance of their embodied truth. Let's dive right in. All right, Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me here today.
It is my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I love how you said pleasure, because one of the first things I want to ask you is I love how you state that your work intersects pleasure, healing, and spirituality. Because I know from my life how they all go hand in hand, but I am curious, for you, have they always gone hand in hand? Is there a journey that you've been on that perhaps you're like, oh, wow, these are all present?
That's such a beautiful question, and I love that you have your own experience with all of them. I think my journey, yes, there's a journey for sure. I think that they were all separate parts of me. And the work has been to realize that they need to be integrated and become one column within my being. And I can be spiritual and sensual and like healed in all the different aspects, even enraged at times, and be ecstatically enraged.
Mm.
But the journey really started as, I think, from like pleasure was a mixed bag of like, it's okay, but also there's aspects of shame here. So I was carrying around this like wild woman being and would only bring her out in certain parts of my life and where it felt safe to be embodied in that wild essence of it, I should say. And then the rest of the time, it's like, oh no, here I'm sweet. I'm just a girly girl, kind of playing like the maiden energy. But that never felt fully complete. So now it's like teaching other people to not necessarily go the exact path that I have, but like find the points of shame that's within them and then utilize special techniques and alchemy to move their sensuality into a space of spirituality, which connects them higher to, the divine.
Hmm. I love that. I feel like this work is so important. And you and I have talked about this before, where to be fully expressed in this world, like fully human, fully divine in this mystic sense that we kind of both play in.
Mm-hmm.
And the fully human part often really gets missed,
Yeah.
especially as some people are on the spiritual path. They're like, I'm holy, I'm praying, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, are you fully experiencing the pleasures
Mm.
of this life? And to be, you and I are both in woman, female bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a gift. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I hear you say that, I'm thinking about this more recent conversation that I had with a divine masculine man who is deeply analytical and in his own path with Kabbalism, and it's beautiful. And he's really on this in this space of eliminating desires and what are desires. And it triggered me for a minute, not in a bad way, but in a way of like, oh my goodness, I'm filled with desires and my desires feel fun and juicy and creative and lead me into this really interesting life. But maybe I can't ascend if I have all the desires. And then it was recently, even more recent, I was in another beautiful workshop where I was like jostled back awake. And the remembrance was, okay, we have a lot of like masculine leading spirituality, which is all about ascending, right? And clearing. That's what they really need. And that's what I've been doing for a long time. But it wasn't until I started to go into the feminine principles and go deep and feel into, like, descend into my body, go into, the lower chakras, not in this like uh dark way, I would say, but in this like really curious space of like, let me explore what's here, let me be reconnected with Mother Earth. And in that way I feel like I'm pulling light in the same time as I'm like pushing energy down and pulling up from the earth. And now I feel so much more embodied, and I don't feel like I am leaving my body. I feel like I can be present in my feminine power, my feminine desires, which then gives the masculine out there kind of some direction as far as if they don't have desires, we just do. They're going to help create them.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to stay juicy and right here.
Yes, yes. Like, come feel this with us, fellas. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And I like going back to what you said about like dismantling the shame.
Mm,
Because I think a lot of our culture and women in particular, especially those that have any connection to spirituality or the church, especially in like the Western world, grow up with a lot of shame
mm,
around sensuality and what are desires and
mm.
feeling things in the body that maybe we're taught, quote unquote, we shouldn't feel.
Yeah, yeah.
And kind of your journey of helping others dismantle shame.
Mhm.
And what are some like techniques that either you've used or that have been really helpful for you on this journey
Mhm.
to kind of unravel that bind
Oh,
that's been put on us?
sure, sure. Well, I work predominantly in the erotic space, and I find that most people um, they don't know what their core desires are.
Mm.
And some people do, but we'll go with those who don't know what they are. So the number one way that we work through that is once we go through like breathing techniques and really getting them more embodied and feeling safe with me, it's then actually asking them to describe like their most erotic movie. Like, what would be the most erotic thing? How would it feel? What would it look like? What would it taste like, smell like? Like every single sense is described. And then what I do is I help them go even deeper into the senses, and we kind of role play that out in in a vocalization way of like, okay, what about this? Or can we dance with this type of aspect? And when people are able to basically write a script for what their most sensual, sexy desire is, we can then go back and look at the words that are used, the different sensations that they're wanting to feel. And then that helps pinpoint what their core desires are. Some people want to feel cherished and held and nourished. Others want to feel raptured and desired, and or even powerful and strong, or even we can go into darker spaces. And one of the cool things about this is people start to see what their erotic blueprint is, which I think a lot of people are kind of familiar with, and how their erotic blueprint might actually shift and change depending on the way they take their movie. And you can explore there's three main erotic blueprints. You can explore all three of them in one particular scene. But at the end of the day, there's like a core thing that someone's looking for. And I did this recently with myself, and I might be a little graphic with this. It wasn't in an act, but it was more so it was just a mental exercise. And I was thinking about this fantasy that formed for me over the last several years. And to provide some background, I was in a relationship that was really harmful and neglectful and abusive, unfortunately, but I learned a lot in it. And in that time, I felt very neglected and not desired. So I formed this desire of wanting to have two masculine cis males like devour me sexually. And for a while, I was like, that's interesting that would form. Why do I have that? And I couldn't really figure it out. And I went to the thing of like, well, maybe it's because my partner hasn't really desired me. I don't feel like he loves me. So I just need to be like overwhelmed with masculine love and energy. And I'm projecting that into the sexual space. And that's how it's showing up as an erotic desire. And then I dug a little deeper and I was like, well, actually, what I want is to feel filled by the masculine. Like I want all of that strength and power and devotion to the feminine goddess that I believe that I am coming into me. So then I had to go into the practice of, well, I don't have a partner. I'm not going to make that specific fantasy come true at this time. How can I find that fulfillment of masculine energy for myself? In what ways can I bring that in? So there's deeper layers to it. So for me, that's the God essence of, we have this general idea, oh, it's a desire, it might be a kink, but there's something beneath it. So if someone can go through the exercise of writing out what their hottest sexual movie is, and then find the core desires beneath that, then just if you can mine a little deeper, you might be able to find the spiritual component within it.
I love that so much, of how it's layered. And
Yeah.
it's helping and guiding you. It's like your body, right? You're this like what might just seem like a sexual bodily desire.
Mm-hmm.
It's using the body and the body's intelligence and the somatic intelligence to actually find the need and the desire underneath.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And for some of our listeners that might be a little newer to this work, that might have been squirming a little thinking about doing that exercise, right? Being like, oh, I can't, I don't know. Or like, I don't watch anything like that. Or I don't, like,
Yeah.
these feelings come up of that automatic, like you might have a bodily reaction. And if you're listening to this, I just want you to know that that's okay. And that's part of this process, is even like understanding, and you can talk to this more, Cece, of like, where are you and how comfortable are you in these things? And what might be something that they can do if they do notice that they are like clenching up or feeling like that's bad.
Oh, Oh, well, lovely listeners, I have judged my thoughts and been judged by my thoughts and the truth of who I am many times. If you're clenching, the first thing to do is just take a really big breath and like sense where that clenching is in the body. And just like any exercise that many people do, just hold space for it and exhale into it. And
Mhm.
just invite the full awareness of that discomfort into your body. And like by paying attention to these pain points and looking at them, many times they become smaller, they become much more approachable. And you could even do an exercise if you wanted to go in deeper, is just get really more quiet, just continue to do deeper breaths. And if you can get your brain to soften, I always ask my brain, like, okay, I love you, you're here, you've served me well, but can you just melt a little bit? I want to talk to this aspect, this thing that's coming up. And then once the brain softens, you can kind of talk to the trigger. You can talk to the thought, and like you would another person, and it becomes this disarming um, option to explore things that are triggering you, because our biggest triggers, our biggest pains are our growth edges.
Mhm.
And if you're having, like, when I first started having that desire, I kind of started judging myself, and then I became curious, and I think curious is the antidote to pretty much any any judgment, any shame. Like, oh, that's so fascinating, why are you here? So if you can approach these triggers that way, more than likely you're going to come to a softer understanding of why it's triggering you, and what aspect of you might actually like the thing that's triggering you, which is many times in the erotic space. That's the real truth. And then also know that even if you have these varying ideas or fantasies, or we can flip it, your partner comes to you and starts saying these things that they might like or want to explore, and you feel really threatened or triggered by them, you can recognize that just because it's your fantasy or someone else's, it doesn't mean that it has to come into fruition. And
Mm.
maybe your partner doesn't even want it to really happen. They're being intimate, as in expressing who they are. They're opening up to you, right? And allowing you to bear witness to a truth that they have. And that might just be enough.
Oh, I love that. And
Mhm.
it's another reason why I think it's so important, the work that you do of wanting to dissolve the shame, right? And stepping into the full radiance of embodied truth and allowing the curiosity and
Mhm.
allowing for all of these things to be okay.
Mhm.
Especially again, back to like how we were raised in our culture. I think a lot of us are taught very like rigid and mental to like not want things we can't have.
Sure.
Right, or like it's like silly to maybe express a fantasy and you're like, "What do you mean they don't?" It's like, I don't know, what if someone just came to you flip side, not even like sexually, and is like,
Mhm.
"I wanna run the world and do this and do that." It's like when we're kids, it's so permissioned. It's like,
Mhm.
"What do you wanna do? Dream big. What are your fantasies?" Right?
Yeah.
Maybe not in a sensual sexual sense, but even that part of us has been shut down.
Mhm.
And this can be an avenue to really explore things. Or like, if I could have anything.
Mhm.
And if I could have these desires, and what if I could be a little kinky? What if this could be like a hidden desire that makes me like the bad girl? And what does it feel like to step into that archetype and
Yeah.
fully explore all of these aspects of ourselves, which I believe is part of being fully human?
Mm. Mhm. Oh,
It's
yeah.
having all of these sides and getting to play in them and act in them, which I've only dipped a little bit compared to what you've dipped to into like kink and BDSM work. But there is this component of like embodying different archetypes that are all part of us and parts of us that have been pushed down or labeled bad or put in the shadows. And I'd love to hear your experience. For me, there's been such liberation of bringing those parts to life and
Mhm.
reintegrating them into myself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love it. Well, um, there's so many archetypes, right? And I feel like we move through not just our lifetime, but even throughout the day, we're moving in and out of different archetypes. And if you can personify an action or a feeling or something, I feel like it feels more comfortable to be with. And the greatest one for me to actually integrate has been like Kali destructive regenerative energy, right? Like moving from this place of fearing my anger, because I grew up in a home where expressing anger wasn't safe and it was only modeled in a way that was super unhealthy from, the father side. um, but it wasn't until I was in a really deeply toxic relationship where, like, my anger, I would try to be the sweet one, the soft one, like appeasing, doing all the things, gray rocking, all the different techniques you utilize to kind of stay safe and sane and maintain some happiness within a dynamic like that. But I couldn't hold it all the time. And eventually, like, Kali would come out and she would be like, like ferocious and just out there. And she was protecting me and defending me. And like, finally, enough was enough. And since that relationship concluded, I had to really go through working through the shame that he would then turn on me and say, like, see, you're evil, you're bad, look how awful you are, you did this, you said this to me, whatever it might be, negating everything that had happened before that. So like, my process that I had to attack it was actually going into studying BDSM, and I had played in the space before, and I love it, and I have very spiritual experiences in that space. But I wanted to flip it from being submissive and moving into dominant energy and understanding what the full force of being someone who can hold a dominant container means. Simultaneously, while I was working through that what it means to be dominant and the power that one has in service to another, I started to then recalibrate my association with anger. I started to feel confident and safe to say what I want, say what I don't want, and put up a boundary around, certain things that needed them. And then that helped me see that there's a really important part of the protector, the destructor, right? This causes regeneration. And for anything that I've burnt down in my life that needed to be burnt, it led to such beautiful grasses and a fertile land for the magic that's come afterwards.
I love that so
Mm.
much. And it's so powerful, especially as women. That's another part that we tend to hide in our society is the anger and
Mm-hmm.
the dominant, the power over,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes people can confuse that and be like, oh, but if I want to be in my feminine, then I'm submissive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many spectrums of the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're like, one flavor is. And one flavor is Kali, is dominating, is this like power over that knows what we want and can take it and can burn down what no longer serves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the bringing that forth and the like integrating that into, and also in that story you just told of just using this work as a way to navigate and hold your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And even the simplest thing of learning what you want and you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who very regularly puts herself in BDSM and kink environments, and does hardly anything physical. She's there to work on her boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
she's there to learn and get curious. And either through trying herself or through just watching, of just learning more about herself and what she wants and what she doesn't want. And then voicing it. Because knowing it's one thing,
Mm-hmm.
voicing it and taking action on it is another.
Absolutely.
And so there's all of these ways that I love how this work can be integrated to really show us more about who we are
Mm-hmm.
and what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so much magic when we know what we want. Oh, I feel like life shifts.
Mm-hmm. Truly. I was having this beautiful conversation with a girlfriend last night about being clear on what we desire. And I think I've been a little foggy lately. And it was a really good reminder, get crystal clear, because you are a powerful being who can manifest and bring forth anything. You just have to know exactly what you want. And when it comes to playing in kink spaces or even in more vanilla type relationships, it doesn't matter. The principles can apply, even not even if it's sexual. You can take the same principles that you would learn in like a BDSM kink scenario, apply it to your relationship, romantic, working relationships, friendships, etc., across the board, and it's going to enhance your communication. I believe at this point in my life, I can't trust someone who doesn't know what they want. And I
Mm,
don't mean like you have to know everything crystal clear, but if you don't have any idea what you want, then you're kind of flailing. And I don't say that from a judgmental space, and I certainly dip in and out of that from time to time, but like I can't trust you to speak up. And that means that I'm going to be kind of walking on eggshells just trying to figure out what you might want, until you get there. And that doesn't feel trusting to me.
totally. This is a very minute example of this, but yesterday I was driving and I have just a lot of pieces in my head that I'm holding right now for different events and different things. And I interacted with probably 4 or 5 cars that didn't use their turn signal.
Mm,
And it's such a silly example, right? But I was like, bro, I don't have the capacity to guess where you want to go right now.
mhm,
Just tell me.
mhm.
You're at this intersection. You're clearly what's happening? Like,
Yes.
I'm like, just help me out. Like, and you're right. People, if you know what you want, if you have clear direction,
Mhm,
and if they know it and you know it, then things flow and they navigate. And it doesn't mean we need to like merge with the partner or go where they're going,
mhm,
but it really helps. So, oh, you want to go right? Awesome, me too. Oh, you want to go right? I want to go left. That's great. We can go at the same time.
mhm.
Like, oh, I want to go right. You want to go straight. We might run into each other, you know? So,
Yes, what a fantastic example. I hope you don't mind if I use that in the future.
oh, please do. I was like watching myself and I was like, this is so silly that I'm so frustrated. But it happened so many times over and over again. Like, even one person, I was like, how am I supposed to guess that you wanted to stop right now?
Mhm.
You know?
Well, yeah, I think it's a beautiful way of like looking at like we make social agreements to utilize turn signals and things like that so that our society can function a little bit better. And if you're not using the if you're not abiding by the agreement, then things aren't going to flow properly. And that is dis- disruptive and annoying. So stop.
Yeah. And you're never going to get where you want to go if you
Exactly.
don't know where you're going.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Which is why, again, I feel like this work is so important, especially for the feminine and the masculine. But my experience has been in the feminine
Right.
of not being ashamed to know what we want
Mm-hmm.
and asking for it.
Yeah. Well, I think that the fear has been, well, I ask for it and then I don't get it,
Mm.
or I'm made to feel bad for wanting that, right? And that's where the stickiness is, because a lot of us in childhood we're neglected, we don't get what we want, we're shamed. So many things, as you know, stem from childhood, and we have to really go back and reparent ourselves and get super comfortable with being disappointed. Like the child wants to throw a tantrum, right? I want this. But the adult, you can hold yourself in that moment and be like, you know what? This is really disappointing. This sucks that I can't get exactly what I want. But on the flip side, if you do, well, staying within that, you can still celebrate that you asked, you said
Mm.
something, you stated what you wanted. Definitely still celebrate that. And then if you ask and you get what you want, then you truly can be celebrating because you're like, okay, here it is. I do receive. Wonderful. Good me. Go me.
I love that. And I love when you can practice that in any situation. Like I was talking to a girlfriend that she wasn't asking for exactly what she wanted at the coffee shop because she
Mm.
didn't want to be like a bother.
Oh, mhm.
Right? Like even something I don't want to say that's small, but it's a place to practice
Sure.
of like, but what do you want? Do you want half the amount of sugar? Do you want a different kind of milk?
Hmm.
Like, let's see what happens when you ask for it. And her just like practicing asking for it. And of course, the baristas, like it's their job. They love it. They're like, okay, great, da 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 da. Here you go. And it's like retraining a muscle
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh, I wasn't a bother. Like no one got mad at me,
Hmm.
right? Like these like little ways that we can learn to retrain of like, what do we actually want and what happens when we ask for it? Yeah.
Hmm. Mm. Beautiful. Hmm.
I want to pivot a little bit because I've been so curious. I watch your Shibari
Yeah.
online on your Instagram page, which I will share with everybody. And it's so beautiful. And it's a modality that I've been wanting to try. I haven't
Mm.
yet. And so I was wondering if you could first explain what it is, like how you came across it, how you use it. I just think it's so beautiful. And I personally want to learn more about it.
Oh, glorious. Yes, I love it. So I won't get into the full history of Shibari, but essentially it comes from Japan. Japan has a long history of utilizing rope, bamboo rope, as a fastener. So in Japan, a lot of things are extremely practical, but also symbolic. So it started to be used as a way to kind of like detain people, right? And then has evolved since into an art form, and then also used in sensual sexual practices. And now people are starting to wake up to the somatic side of it. I think people who get tied understand it, but there really wasn't language being used around it in the way it is now.
Right.
So
Because if you just see someone tied up with ropes,
yeah, yeah,
you might be like, what? But
right,
it's so much
right.
deeper than that.
It's so much deeper. So, and even in the ties and if you see people bound, there are ways in which they can be rigged, which is meaning like suspended in the air. And certain positions used to in Japan like represent different aspects of what the person did or was trying to send a political message. So that's kind of where the art form came. So there are beautiful performance artists and artists just in general out there who are utilizing rope bondage for that. And then there's people who use it for kink practices. And that's how I first became introduced to it. And I would play with a partner in that way. And just to give a personal anecdote, why it was so powerful for me, we had played where he had bound me all up, and we engaged in all the fun there. And as he was untying me, I started having crazy visuals of what I now know are past lives. And maybe it was pulling from the collective, but it could have been my past lives. But anyways, just flashes of I was different genders, different ages, different races, and different scenarios where I was being liberated or escaping or, let go in some way from imprisonment. And then you can imagine all the different emotions of like, oh my gosh, are they going to catch me? I ran away. I can't believe I'm being freed. Is this real? Etc. And it was then that I realized, wow, there's something more to these ropes than just like feeling sexy and getting attention from my man, like being the object of his desire and being like submitting. So that then put me into this path of like, I would like to explore it, how to do this myself. So then I spent, I don't know, the last couple of years studying it. And now I teach people how to do like intro level understandings of the ropes, how to go into surrender sessions either alone or with someone else. And then I also provide what I call somatic Shibari sessions. So people come in and, based on what they're going through, I tie them up and we just do different things like breath work and movement and holding. And the rope itself starts to clamp down on the body, so it feels very tight. And many people who are scared of it think, oh, I don't want to be restrained. I like to be in control. And I always say to those people, you're the perfect person for this, because what you're actually going to feel for the first time in probably a very long time is you're going to feel held and liberated, which is kind of the opposite of what you think when you think about being bound. But that's the ultimate result that occurs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, I love it. I've been watching you do it, and I think I would resonate with that feeling really like held, of like not having to hold myself, but being held
Mm-hmm.
by an external force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love it because it does really intersect all of these worlds that you play in of the sensuality and sexuality and the spirituality and the somatic.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure with those past lives and having those recollections, it had to do with what was happening on and in your body
Mm-hmm.
to
Absolutely.
bring back some of those remembrances. And I found the somatic practices really can help liberate parts that are so deep in our brain and in our subconscious that we don't know are there, but that live in our body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think many times we can think that we've like mentally and spiritually cleared them, but the body hasn't yet. And
Mhm.
that's the part that is the most lasting. Like really, you have to you have to do physical things in some aspects to move them from the stuck points within the body. And the ropes are hitting on your meridians, right? Like different acupressure points. So there's a lot that we could go into there. I'm not an acupuncturist, but my minimal understanding of it really starts to be exposed when people are lying down. And then after we go through a session, they start sharing with me memories, like deep rooted memories that they've long forgotten came forward, and they just kind of like bubbled up and out.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a powerful practice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
And I highly recommend everyone go check out Cece's Instagram because it is really beautiful.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It
And
formed too.
I'm trying to show people that it's really accessible, and you really don't have to have know a bunch to order in order to, even if you're working on self ties, it becomes a very meditative practice. Just with you, this kind of brings it into like meditation of like your focus on what you're doing on your body. You're almost in your own little world, and everything else falls away. The nervous system starts to calm down, and you get into a flow state of creativity and just having fun, and time really zooms away really quickly, and you start out just trying to figure out where you want to put the rope. You may not have a plan, and then at the end of it you just have something really beautiful that you want to sit in for a while.
Mm. Okay, I'm sold. I'm going to
Yay.
practice this at some point soon. I feel a resonance,
Uh-huh.
right? And that's one of the reasons I want to have these conversations and to explore things because a lot of us don't know what's out there until we do.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And so for anyone listening too, if you feel any kind of resonance or intrigue or curiosity, like that's your hint to go further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, to, like, explore and just be like, "Oh, okay," like, something in me is lighting up. I might not know why, I might have a mental block being like, "No, stop," but it's like of allowing that curiosity and like, "Huh, okay."
Yeah. 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 Explore it, and just know, I've come across friends who are like, yeah, I do Shibari. And I'm like, okay, show me. And then they've been really not safe with it. So
Mm,
I do advise, because there are safety risks. They're easy to prevent, but just make sure that you're learning, safety protocols first, and then go for it. Have a lot of fun.
awesome, I love that. So along with the exploration of the somatic work and the sensuality work, I wanna touch just a little bit on your spiritual exploration,
Mm.
and I'm curious, what is your personal relationship with the divine, with God, the universe, with something bigger, whatever your word is for here.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I tell myself and others I am a disciple of love.
Mm,
And what that means to me is love is more than an emotion. Love is all encompassing. Love is what we're here to experience. And that doesn't mean only like only positive, joyous feeling. It's actually all encompassing of pain and suffering, and really understanding that it all serves a purpose. Um, that being said, I, in the last several years, have started to come into awareness of um, the, how do I want to say, the layeredness of ecosystems and multidimensional beings, right? And how there's intersection between them all. And as I continue to explore what that means, it it's almost like I'm living in a sci-fi like movie sometimes. But the beings that I communicate with and do the dance of life with are so loving, so nourishing, so encouraging. And for my whole life, I've always felt held, even in really um, horrible moments. And I didn't know why I was held. I could just feel it. And um, so so there's a lot of different expressions of like God, divine. I think we all have different words to describe our flavor of experiencing the divine, and I love it. Like, I love all of them. And one of the things I like about me is I don't mind exploring all of them.
Oh, I love that.
Like, recently I've been reading about um, the sex magic of Isis and Egyptian alchemy. And that is what, of all the sex magic practices out there at this point, I've explored quite a few. This is the one that feels the most honorable to the feminine
Mm.
and in alignment with what I believe like my soul blueprint is.
I love that. I'm actually reading right now. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The Maeve Chronicles. Have you read those?
Oh no.
It's a Magdalene series,
Oh.
but in one of them, she is currently in a whorehouse
Mm-hmm.
and has just come across in the Roman world and this dedication of Isis, and is in
Mm-hmm.
her own exploration of connection and what is this, which is helping evoke something new in me too,
Mm-hmm.
of like, oh wow, these energies and these powers that can come in and that we get to explore,
Yeah.
and these frequencies that I believe are always available to us. And I think different ones come in at different times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it is really fun to be able to explore them all
Mm-hmm.
and to not hold so fast to this is the only way.
Mm-hmm.
But, almost just like exploring sensuality and sexuality and spirituality, it's all flavors of what is this? Let me try this. Let me taste this. And then what resonates? Or maybe what do I need today?
Exactly.
In
Ex-
this moment, do
yeah.
I need something more meditative? Do I need something more fiery and liberating? And knowing that all of it is available.
Yeah.
So I love that. And the more things I believe that we can like add to our toolkit in all of these areas,
Mm-hmm.
again, the more embodied we get to become, and the like fullness of life we get to taste and explore and play in.
Absolutely. And I firmly believe that being a being who incarnates on earth is a special assignment, it's a special agreement. And a large part of coming into this planet is not to numb out, it's actually to be in the zest of life, to experience all of it. And there are periods of my life, and even sometimes a day or two here or there, where I'm like, oh, I just want to be numb. I don't want to be stimulated. I don't want to be out there like tasting the fruits of the world. But for the most part, like, we have all these senses and these abilities, so enjoy them. And I think that's what some of these beautiful um, sex magic practices are basically teaching us, is to explore, go deeper into the senses, find the magic that's there, find the God that's within that, and don't be so fixated on just the pleasure or the reproduction of this, but like the deeper union that is forming, and it can be while you're in rapture with your beloved.
Mm. And I love that these practices, essentially, the more time we spend with ourselves, of
Mm-hmm.
getting to know ourselves and how we can pleasure ourselves, how we can, give ourselves what we need, like that doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-mm.
And I was talking to a friend recently of this year in particular. I mean, we're not even 6 weeks in, and it's been nutso. And we were like, thank God we've had years to develop some of these practices of coming home to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have to get as caught up in the chaos or in
Yes.
the external or in the distractions that are just distractions from
Mm-hmm.
what is actually like happening within us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just keep saying, like, if there was ever a time to develop these skill sets and these practices, it's now.
Mhm.
because you can come back to yourself. You can drop into the body and shut off the mind and remember your truth and what is yours to remember and stand in that.
Yes, 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 yes. Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, like even just now to just, gaze at you as we're doing our video, like, and just say yes. And we both can feel into what that means.
Mm,
There's such juiciness just in our own being and so much to explore in our inner world. And I was told by my guides a year ago, um, go as deep as possible
mm,
and then go as high as possible. And I've been on
mm,
that assignment and it's been glorious and painful, but each pain has led to this beautiful and ecstasy. And I think we fear the pain, not realizing that if we embrace it, there is true abundance in the knowledge and the growth that comes, and that's pleasurable.
mm. Oh, I love that. Go deep as possible and as high as possible.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. Is there anything else you would love? Is there a nugget? I know we went a lot of places.
Gosh. Um, hmm. I think that the nugget which we kind of touched on already, but is just to gently, lovingly nudge people to follow their little pings of curiosity,
Mm,
and don't just act. Just take a little step and explore it. And if you taste something and you're like, oh, I don't like that, okay, then you tasted it. You don't have to fully commit to anything, or if you even commit to, like, I committed to this course once, and I was like a month in, I was like, nope, not for me. I am out. It's too bad money spent, but I knew it wasn't for me. But just explore your curiosities, follow your little bliss bubble, because I believe that we are implanting ourselves before we come into this life with desires, and that's kind of the mission, is to explore self-actualization through finding those desires and exploring them in this lifetime.
mm. Yes. I And then I would love if you could just share. So if this resonates with you, if this resonates with our listeners, like how can they find you? What workshops? I know you have a few workshops coming up. You have your own beautiful podcast, the Her Drive podcast. If you just share ways that they can connect with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, you guys should listen to my conversation with Jenny on her drive. It was so good.
It was
Oh,
fun.
it's so good. So my upcoming workshop, you might laugh at the name, but the short name is like the magical hand job.
Oh,
No, which is very spicy.
ooh, spice it up.
And it's the premise of the workshop coming up in March 10th is first to teach the women who come to find embodiment in their own eroticism, and really initiate into your own goddess, and find that fiery goddess who then wants to initiate her beloved through the devotion of a lingam massage. And it's
Mhm.
not just, giving a hand job. There's energy work, there's breath work that you'll coach them through, and you'll actually attune to each other, and you'll end up having, I'll say almost guaranteed, I'll say guaranteed, a really powerful experience. So
Mm.
that's the one that's posted right now. Very excited about it. And um and then, yeah, I can be found two different locations, her-drive.com or cynthiacramblett.com, or same, and my Instagram's the same, Cynthia Cramblett.
Perfect. And I'll put it all in the show notes so people can have access. Thank you, one, for the conversation, but more importantly, for the work you're doing.
Mm.
I am just like honored to share the space with you. And it's so important to me that all women have the opportunity and hopefully encounter women like you that are out there teaching of how to dismantle the shame and how to step into what your desires are and how to become like the most full version of yourself. Because we are on this planet with this life in this body right here, right now. And we get to have it all.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, it's been such a joy to see you and talk to you.
Yes. All right. So, everyone, check out the show notes. We love Cynthia and all the work she's doing. All right, friends. What'd you think? I'd love to know. And I have all the ways that you can connect with Cynthia in the show notes. You can also head over to my Instagram. I will have her tagged in all the things. And I encourage you, if this is perhaps one of the first times you've heard about some of these topics or heard about the terms, don't hesitate to reach out. We are more than happy to chat with you. And I encourage you just to follow your curiosity, to dive into some of these areas, to lean into your edges, and to explore. Explore your own body, explore your own desires, explore your own relationship with pleasure. And I love what Cynthia said about going as deep as we go high. And as much as we connect and we pray perhaps to an external, something bigger than us, how much time can we spend with the internal and getting to know the heart of us? So stay tuned for more beautiful, powerful episodes of Mystic Bloom, a sanctuary for spiritual exploration and really an exploration of all things in a place that is safe, where we get to do this work together. Thank you for being here and tuning into Mystic Bloom. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe. And if you feel called, leave a rating or comment. It truly helps more people find this space. To be the first to know about Mystic Bloom offerings, invitations, and events, visit mysticbloom.co. That's .co like community, and enter your email to join the sanctuary. Until next time, may you enjoy your journey.